Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and as all of you know, I've been going through some shit lately, and it hasn't been easy. But while I was going through the worst of it, one of my best friends was like, "This whole situation is terrible, Mike, but out of this is going to come a lot of opportunities for you, and you have to take them." And I wasn't really sure what he was talking about then, but he was right. Opportunities are coming my way. First, a listener who runs a travel group called Outside Life called to place a sticker order. He explained that he does all these different types of ski trips, from sick college trips to Jackson Hole, to trips to Europe, to a Japan trip with Olympic gold medalist Caitlin Farrington. They have so many different options on the table. So when he was ordering his stickers, I was like, "That's so rad that you're doing this. You should take me on a trip." And he was like, "You're right." So now I'm heading to Jackson Hole with 700 college students from December 15th through 18th. I'm going to ski a couple of days. I'm going to MC a big event they're going to have at the tram dock. I'll do a podcast, and I'm going to party my face off. Really, I need fun trips like this. So thank you, Outside Life. I'm so stoked to join you on this one. I'm also planning on skiing Utah, Tahoe, and Colorado this year. And while all of these trips may not happen, I'm going to make sure that I start taking advantage of opportunities that I've had to say no to over the past 3 years. And while going on trips isn't going to make up for my loss, it sure will be fun. And I'm stoked on that. Another thing I'm stoked on in life is that my kid passed his driver's test. I try not to bring kids into the podcast very much because I don't like talking about children, but this is a huge milestone in my kid's life, so congratulations, Keaton. Enjoy the CRV. It looks like I'm going to be buying a new car in the next 10 days, and that's exciting and nerve-wracking all at the same time. Anyway, that's life. The sadness is still real on my end, but I'm going to try to distract myself this season with skiing and work and podcasting and live events and all the kid stuff that I have going on, even though my 16-year-old kid doesn't want me to be a part of his life as much because he's a 16-year-old kid and that's what they're supposed to do. And while I'm not always going to be happy, hopefully the busyness in my life will make up for that. But there's no time to complain about that because I have another incredible episode with Matt Reardon for you. This time we finish out his ski career and talk about his rockstar life. And before we get into it, I want to thank Josh Loubek for not only asking the inappropriate questions, but for also sending me another care package of his Nima vitamins. I swear by Nima, and I take them every day. And if you want a lot of pep to your step, check out Nima, that's Niima. Thank you, Josh. Now, it's time for me to ask you to do a couple of things for me. First, I want to ask you to review me wherever you listen. Second, please tell a friend about the show. But most importantly, please support my incredible sponsors who make the podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, Thermic Heated Socks, and Descent Labs. Now, let's talk with Matt Reardon.
I can't remember exactly where we left off. I should have checked that out. But I'm thinking you were in Chamonix. And I guess thinking of where we left off, did you become more than just a skier there? Or are you a full-on mountaineer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes with the territory there. You really need to kind of know your stuff. But was I doing, just all the crazy lines that are super consequential? I only did them, when it was right. I was very careful because it's a pretty dangerous little valley, as we all know. But yeah, I had my bucket list, and I lived with Stian Hagen the first couple of years, and he's a fantastic mountaineer. And, being someone that worked in trees and knew rigging and all that, that really helped me with, exposure and ropes and knots and rigging. But having a mentor or somebody you looked up to like Stian, and living together with him, he really got me to do some lines that I wouldn't have bit off or felt comfortable. And the guy that brought me over there, my first time ever to France, I went to Le Grave, was with Jim Morrison, and we do see how well he's done.
Yeah.
He just is in the record books for life, man. That's pretty incredible.
That is incredible what he did. I've got to work on getting him on the podcast. But in just thinking about the shit that you had to do out there and just the stuff that Stian was getting you into, for you, you knew all that stuff, rigging and ropes and stuff like that. So just getting into those lines right away, you could probably do because of experience that you had before. But when you would have buddies come out there who were used to skiing in Tahoe and shit like that, was it like mind blowing to them? Like, holy shit, we're going to go up the Aguia Medi or however you say it. And we're just going to like climb up here and there's no rules. We do whatever the fuck we want.
You know, it's funny you say it that way because people that were just gnarly and crazy good and dropping lines in squaw, it was funny to see how people would react when you get off the Aguia or if you get off the top of the Monte and go on the Belvedere, right? I remember the first time I did it where you throw your leg over the rail and then you're walking out on a cable and you're like, where the hell am I going? And after a while, you know, you get used to it, but it was always funny to see people who were ungodly great skiers, but who were just gripped, you know, because it is such a different league over there. And I have so much respect for mountaineers and all the lines over there that get skied. It's just the exposure and the surroundings of Sham. I think Glen Plake said it best. Extreme skiing is like, you know, anybody, if you take a 2x4 and you just go walk across a 2x4, say 10 feet, you're 2 feet off the ground. We'll now do it 1,000 feet off the ground and put a backpack on and put wind, you know. It was really, really an eye-opening experience the first couple of years. And I'll tell you, I never wanted to get complacent or get relaxed because that's not a place that you want to get comfortable or relaxed. I think I can hear your dog snoring in the background. I love it.
You can't hear my dog snoring, and it's a podcast, so everybody can hear my dog snoring. He's a French bulldog, so he snores very loud.
Oh my gal, my fiance has a French bulldog, man. I love those animals. They're a little flawed, you know, on their design, you know, wipe their butt. But I mean, I have fallen head over heels in love with this dog.
Yeah, ours is super cute. He just doesn't really do that much other than snore really loud, make a lot of noise, and play with his dick all the time and rub it everywhere. But that's just what he does, and that's how it is.
So he can actually play with his dick. Not all of them can.
Oh, yeah, he can, and he does. He makes up for a lot of other dogs. He does it a lot during the day. But one thing I did research after the first podcast was the movies that you were in. I forget the name, how to say the name of the series, but it was like, you were saying how big it was, and then I looked, and it was like, it is the Warren Miller of European ski movies, and you were in those movies every year. And when you're in those movies, does that make you bigger than almost being in like a Warren Miller movie in the U.S.? Are you more ski famous in Europe than you would be in the U.S. if you were at the same level skier?
I just think the respect level of like people, you know, look at skiing, they get really into it on an Olympic year. And if you're a ski instructor, you're like, oh, you're a ski bum. But like over there, being a skier is such a respected trade. And it's like a national pastime, especially if you're from Austria. So it was amazing. I didn't understand the magnitude of being in one of those films because I didn't grow up with it. You know, like Warren Miller for me still to this day is like the ultimate crown jewel. But there, you know, you kind of, I'm not saying you became a household name, but it was kind of a trip to walk around Paris and, you know, Germany and all these places, and people do recognize you from that movie. And I was lucky enough to be the person that got selected to tour with it because I would usually write a song. So it was kind of a shoe-in. I would perform at the theater, maybe do one or two songs. I created like an opener and then MC, and it was just a fantastic experience. And, you know, their movie premieres, like the Rex Theater, they would sell it out 2 times in one night. And that's like 4,000 people per show. It was a pretty iconic film to be a part of. And, you know, I count my lucky stars that day on the Grand Monte that I just rocked up, and I didn't think I had a snowball's chance in hell of securing the spot because it was kind of a wild card thing. And it worked out great. And still really good friends with the film producer, director to this day. And, you know, we're talking about he's going to put together the Legends of Free Ride, and he selected all of his favorite guys over the years, and luckily I got thrown in the mix. So we shall see.
So that's filming part, but then another thing that was happening in skiing, the Extreme had been founded before Plake and those guys, but Plake and those guys brought it back to the U.S., but that all came out of the valley that you're living in. And then the next big thing that happened in skiing, I think that all your peers were doing in the U.S., was skier cross. And did that happen at all in France? And were you involved in that at all?
Yeah, I was involved with that with Uncle E and Long Paul Crandall in the very beginning of it. Like, I think I was part of the first one ever where we built the course at Homewood. And then we had the governing body of skier cross, which we wrote, like, there was a team of about 8 of us: Kreitler, Anderson, Darian Boyle, a bunch of people you would know. And, that was the early roots of it. And I was hell bent on, getting it going a little bit more over in Europe. And one of the big drivers of it becoming like a regular thing was Enoch Gavaggio. Him and Denny Ray were pumping it pretty hard. So it wasn't taking off as big as it was in the States, but it was definitely gaining momentum, and it was starting to be a part of most of the events. So you'd have a big mountain, you'd have a slope style big air, and then, they'd build like a skier cross course. And back in the day, it was just a hodgepodge of a lot of different things, what made up the criteria of a course. And I loved it. I got to compete in Japan at the core games at skier cross against McConkey. He actually won. But yeah, it really added a whole nother element, especially for guys. I didn't have a racing background at all whatsoever, but someone like McConkey, he was doing really good with it, and he was competing in the big air. And, I loved what it did to open up the sports demographic.
Yep, it was another aspect of the sport that was cool, but it still had a race element to it. So people from every different element of skiing would kind of go into it. Like yourself could go against a guy like Ralphs or whoever was going to jump into it, just because it was for anybody who wanted to do it. It didn't matter your background. Thinking about people that lived in Chamonix around you, was Plake in and out of there when you were living there? I mean, did you get to know him well?
He was starting to be, and he actually ended up buying Darren Skilton's place right above the gendarmerie in the middle of town. And then once he did that he was definitely more like a permanent fixture there, and still is. And I'd go on record to say that guy is the most legit, to this day, still doing it, skier ever to grace the sport. It is mind-boggling how true to the core he is, just a badass skier.
I mean, I don't think there's anybody that loves it more than he does, and it doesn't matter where he goes. From bell to bell, he will go all day long. And if he meets you one day in Madison, Wisconsin, he's going to remember your name 10 years later in like wherever, Washington. He's just got like an uncanny ability to know
He's got a crazy memory for that stuff. And, I remember kind of not defending him, but I remember having a conversation with a bunch of French dudes, and they're like, it's just the haircut. And I'm like, no, it is not just the haircut. That guy is the real deal. There's a few people that have stayed relevant for that long. Candide Thovax still just blows my mind. It is unbelievable at the level that he's still doing it.
Yep.
But Plake, is almost 60, I would imagine. Maybe he is. I'm not sure. I'm 55, but yeah, he still to this day is one of my greatest heroes, idols, and he's such a good face for the sport.
What is your best Glen Plake story?
I don't have a lot of one-on-one stories with him.
Okay.
In playing in the band Fungus, with Palmer, I heard a lot of stories, and I think he changed his ways quite a bit, but the stories are endless about Plake.
They were. And you brought up Fungus, which is great because you have all this ski stuff going, and you had been in Fungus at one point. But are you pretty much the pro skier dude that when you travel everywhere, you just bring a guitar and you're just going to be jamming like on all your trips when you're younger before like music really starts?
That is kind of how it started. Like the first song I ever got contracted to do was by TGR, and they were making a film, and I was down competing in New Zealand. And that's where the title song for their film Further came about. And they hired me to write a theme song, and it happened because I had my acoustic. And, I think I was probably not so good in the beginning and probably annoyed a lot of people traveling with my guitar. But over time, it got better and better and better, and then started to learn how to write music and produce it. And, I have a lot to thank for the opportunities to have that exposure, to have a song go on a movie soundtrack. But on the same token, it's not a shoo-in that you got the gig because you're a skier. You still have to be a legitimate musician.
Oh, for sure. You're not going to ruin their mood because you can play guitar and you think you should be in.
Yeah. Well, it is a catch-22 because it can be a hindrance. Because when I was going to get a record deal, it was like, oh, another athlete who's now a musician, or, vice versa. It's like actors that all of a sudden get into music. They don't really get given the same fair shake. And it sometimes provides, you got to prove yourself a little bit more. But, I've grown up with music as my DNA. I get it from my mom, and I've grown up around it my entire life. And I'm very fortunate that, no matter what music you can do when you're old and decrepit. And I still love music today as much as I did when I first learned how to play guitar. And I didn't learn how to play guitar until I was 18. And I didn't really understand that I had a voice until I was probably 21. I was just singing, and people were like, wow, you should try to do that more.
Huh. Well, I think the crossroads of your music career, because it's like something, like you said, a hobby that you're traveling around with playing guitar, but then it all goes back to the Heli Challenge. You go to the Heli Challenge one year and you totally destroy your knee, and that's like the crossroads of life, right? What happened at that Heli Challenge?
Yeah, I entered the event, and there was Elan Skis, and there was just a massive kicker, and I hit the top for all it was worth. And I was starting to really do double backflips pretty well back then. And that was kind of a very unique thing. And now everybody does it off of anything, but I hit super hard. I did a bucket handle tear on my meniscus, and that was after day one. And so I kind of sat out the rest of it, but still got to go up in the helicopter and hang out. And then, that's when I started talking with the TGR boys late at night.
So it's all that trip that it all happens. It's like the crossroads happens that day, the injury, and you get hired to do music all on the same day almost.
Yeah, and I did a layover on the way home in Indonesia, and my flight guy for Fisher Skis was like, you can take a break because it's a really long flight to go back. So I got off in Kuta, in like Bali, and I ended up renting a place on the beach. And then I went to get an email from JK. His name's John Klikavich. He was early on a major part of TGR. And he gave me kind of like, the idea of further and taking things further. And I still have the email to this day. And then I went down to Uluwatu with a pen and paper and an acoustic and sat down and wrote the whole thing right there. And then, I went back to Germany, and my producer partner and I laid down the track, and that kind of kicked things into motion. And it parlayed. I used that one song, that one demo to be like, hey, is this good enough? Should I keep going? And, turned out it was. And it's been quite the journey. And, TGR, I've ended up working with them on some of their biggest films to date. My writing partner and I worked probably 14 months on the Andy Irons film. And nearly every minute of that film is all, score that me and my partner composed. But the big first one was doing Jeremy Jones Higher, where they had never actually picked someone to score and do all original music for one of their films. Normally, it's just been like license a song and edit it to the song. And they started giving me all the raw rushes, which, I don't know if I was meant to do it, but I naturally knew how to do it.
You knew everything from the ski end and what music was going to work with it.
Yeah, my clients have been like Felix Baumgartner, and he said to me, he goes, I'd rather have you do it because you understand what I'm thinking about. And I've gotten a lot of jobs that way, and maybe I'm the right person, maybe I'm not. I'm not always. But I think it adds a cool element that I've been there in the trenches where they are, and I feed on that adrenaline that I know personally firsthand and try to put it into what I'm writing or composing. And, the best movies ever were Greg Stump, where he partnered with ZTT Records. And he really revolutionized the soundtrack, was almost as important as the skiers.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm stoked to have Thermic back on the podcast as a sponsor. Because when temperatures get nuclear cold, I don't hit the mountain without my Thermic heated socks. They are the original heated sock, and still the industry leader after 20 years. It's a total game changer. We all know that if your feet are frozen, you're not skiing or snowboarding at your best. And if you are, you're suffering through it. I make sure that never happens by always wearing my Thermic socks. Thermic's game-changing smart elastic technology heated socks are our world's first. These SET socks are a high-performance fitting, thin ski sock where the patented heating components have stretch instead of a bulky band and element. So you literally feel like you're wearing your normal favorite pair of performance ski socks. But if heat isn't for you, don't worry. Thermic has you covered with socks for winter with their athlete-tested and proven Descent line of socks. This is the #1 recommended sock by boot fitters in North America because for over a decade, Descent has engineered performance socks to eliminate things like chafing or heel blisters in your boots when you're touring or splitboarding. Descent socks have a distinct locked-on fit that never seems to change, no matter what you get up to. At the end of the day, Thermic and Descent socks are the go-to socks for the people that know. Drop into your local boot fitter and retailer and you'll see what I mean. Next up, it's Outdoor Research. And if you haven't checked out outdoorresearch.com in the past week or so, then you haven't seen the brand new winter line, which looks incredible. I could spend a lot of this ad telling you all the tech and why Outdoor Research is better, but know that in the 1980s and the early 90s, Outdoor Research built a reputation on functional quality outdoor gear that pushed the limits of innovative possibilities. And those who were function first were all about OR gear, because it was and it still is built better, and Outdoor Research is still pushing those limits of innovation. This year, the outerwear focuses on 3 new collections, the Cloud Chaser for backcountry and the Powderverse and Hemisphere collections for freeride, as well as some staples in the line like the Snow Crew collection. These outerwear systems are styled for and by athletes like Mark Adma, Troy Podmilsack, Zoe Aitken, snowboarder Neil Provo, and others, and that's why this outerwear collection not only looks so good, but each piece is more functional than ever, and they're all you're going to need in any conditions. To find out more about the new collection, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley. And sure, you used to know Stanley for keeping your grandpa's coffee hot in that signature green water bottle. Well, they still make that iconic bottle, but Stanley is the talk of the world these days. And while they may have started with the Powell Movement, oh how they have grown. Nowadays, icons like Messi and Caitlin Clark and Post Malone and Olivia Rodrigo are all swearing by their Stanleys. And I've been telling you about how incredible their products are at keeping your drinks hotter and colder than anyone else for over 8 years now. I mean, Stanley invented the category in 1913, and they're constantly innovating to make sure that you have the best. And I know I love having the best. Lately, I've personally been drinking more water than ever thanks to my Stanley Quencher. And when I go to the mountain, I've integrated Stanley food storage devices into my ski routine instead of buying that $20 burger. But I have to say, my all-time favorite Stanley products are their pint glasses, which I've used every day for 8.5 years or so. Like millions of people out there, I love all my Stanley stuff, and I want you to get on the Stanley program too. They give me their best discount code available, so you get 30% off of all your products, and to do that, you head on over to stanley1913.com and you go shopping, buy a ton of stuff, because you're going to get 30% off of it when you check out and use the code Powell 2025. So that's all capitals, Powell, no spaces, and then the numbers 2025 2025. That's going to get you 30% off your Stanley products. Those are my sponsors. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast.
You know, when you think about something like that, where they're hiring you to score the whole movie compared to licensing music, TGR has gone with some huge bands when they license music, and those things aren't cheap. I mean, songs can be 10 to 20 grand, I would think, to be able to use for a movie. Would that be fair to say?
It depends. I know that they're very crafty with Metallica because, you know, if you watch Lars, you'll see most of his interviews, he's always wearing a TGR hat. And, you know, the TGR boys they're crafty. They've been really good at creating relationships because, yes, you're right. You know, a Metallica song, the reason why I got the theme song for the Streif movie, the Honeycomb, is because they didn't want to spend all the money for Nothing Else Matters with San Francisco Orchestra. That was like, I think, $500,000.
So, I mean, we should tell the story of this thing now because you've kind of brought it up. I was going to talk about it later, but the biggest movie I think probably ever produced in Austria was a film about the Honeycomb, right? And Red Bull hires you to score the whole movie, and that really happens because Metallica costs $500,000, and they can work with you for maybe a fraction of that.
I don't know all the ins and outs and details. What I do know is that the initial fee was based on North America. Well, there's 5 regions. So there's Australasia, South America, Europe, you've got the Nordic countries in North America. Well, then it became astronomically expensive, and that was a hot ticket. Nothing Else Matters with the San Francisco Orchestra. It is just amazing. And that was a huge budget film, and I believe to this day is the most successful ski film, Hollywood film, any kind of film, any category. It's the most successful film ever. In Austria, yeah, it won the equivalent of a Grammy, an Oscar, a Tony, an Emmy, everything. We won this award called a Rami, which I'd never heard of it, but apparently it's a really big deal.
When the movie wins stuff for like soundtracks?
Yeah, I've got a few trophies. I won one at Sundance for environmental film, and yeah, that's a hoot to, you know, receive the accolades. But, you know, back to answer your question, I don't know the ins and outs, but I do know that that song was meant to happen because I was in Klagenfurt, Austria, and I was working on some other songs for other projects, and I knew about the Streif, One Hell of a Ride, and it's the documentary on the Honeycomb. And I had worked with the producer, director, Gerald Salmina on Mount St. Elias, which is Axel Noglik's longest ski run in the world that you could do. I think it's about 20,000 vertical feet. So we had a working relationship, and I did 5 songs for that one. But when it came to play that they were trying to get the right theme song, I was in the studio, and this is right on the Slovenian border. I was in a recording studio with the guy that mixes a lot of his films. There was a 12-string on the wall. It was tuned in DAD, which is the same tuning as Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, or a lot of songs by Soundgarden. It's a very, very unique tuning.
Okay.
And when I picked up the guitar, so if you play a normal chord like you know it, it does not work. It sounds horrible. And he said it's in an open tuning. I'm not sure. And it's a 12-string. So I immediately kind of had a good idea, but I did not know where to put my fingers. And I literally came up with the opening walk-up line almost by like accident and just, you know, trial and error. You know, they said, could you write something like this? I said, well, let me give it a try. And I came back and I had a scratch kind of outline of it with a verse and a chorus that I really liked. I was flying back the next day. I said, let me work on it a couple days. And then when I got back to Tahoe, I sat down with my writing partner, Randy Cantor, who's got multiple Grammys. He's Grammy Award winner for Livin' La Vida Loca. He's worked with Eminem, Fugees, Keith Urban, you name it. And he said, wow, this is a really good track. You're onto something. And then I built out a bridge, and he's an insane piano player. So I called up Darren and I said, hey, Darren, I'm just going to pick your brain. And Darren and I water ski a lot in the summer. We water ski more than we snow ski together. And so I just called him up, he lives up the road from me. And I said, look, this is the project. And I said, just want to pick your brain. And I said, I'm kind of thinking about this whole carpe diem. Like, what does it take for you, to really get in that headspace? Because we all think we're gnarly and we do these lines and spines and AK, but I've skied the course in Kitzbühel. Holy shit. I mean, that is next level, coming into the Mousehaula at whatever, 82 miles an hour, and then flying a football field and then landing and having to make a right turn on ice, sheer ice.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And Darren is just wired up different. You think you're good. You go ski with Darren. You're like, no, there's other levels. And we just had a great conversation. I did that with Jeremy as well. Jeremy shared all of his journals, his private journals with me. And that's how I wrote a lot of this stuff for him. But, we came up with the Seize the Day theme and just about what it takes to hang everything, every ounce of your being, everything out on the line, and then even throttle it a little bit harder, because for you to win that race, it's unbelievable. It's a feat that Darren should be, you talk to downhill skiers and you ask them, would you rather win a gold medal in the Olympics or would you rather win the Hahnenkamm? And I think out of 100 World Cup skiers they asked, only one said an Olympic gold medal. I'll send you the original demo. It's just an acoustic and piano and voice. And then when I sent it over, they were like, that's it. Great job. And then next thing you know, we've got a full orchestra going on it. And that's a dream come true. That was right place, right time, being prepared and, having the right friends and the right idea and concept. And to this day, that was one of the funnest original title songs I've ever been a part of.
Well, this whole thing happens because of a knee injury. So we're going to go all the way back to the knee injury. So it happens in New Zealand. You end up going back to France and it's not like, I don't think you do a terrible thing to your knee. It's just cartilage stuff, but you end up with an infection that ruins the next 3 years of your life or something.
Yeah. So I was just going to go in and clean up. I had a tear in my meniscus. They were going to try to sew it together and then clean up the cartilage. Very routine, great doctor. I received the worst strain of staph infection known to man, and my life really, really changed drastically. It was just unbelievable. It was like the needle on the record just went. But out of tragedy comes triumph, and I don't think I would have the music career I have today and still have going quite well if I didn't go through all that strife and turmoil, because it was pretty touch and go. They had to open me up 7 times, back to back to back to back, to keep cleaning out the staph. And then they shoot, it's like a dye. They shoot it into your bloodstream, and then the dye attaches to the staph, and then they see where it is. They put you in a tube and then bring you out. And then they've already sewn you back up. You go home and then you wait and then go back. I kept having to go back another 4 days later, and then they kept me in the hospital for a week. And it got to the point where they were like, if it goes above your knee, you have to sign, that if it goes up into your bloodstream, then you're done. And I was like, how did this happen? Because I just came in to have a routine little cleanup surgery. But a lot of people don't understand. You get staph infection 9 times out of 10, you get it in the surgery room. And it lives in hospitals, and it's gnarly. It really upended my life, but such is life. And, you take the good with the bad. And the next 3 years, I learned how to be a writer because I was scared. I was like, well, the ski money bag is going to dry up here, and I better figure out if I want to do music.
Did sponsors stick by you? Because you get hurt and it's going to be 3 years. Are they still paying you the whole time?
It was funny. The first year, I had done so many photo shoots the year before. The next year, when I was completely laid up, I ended up with the cover of every magazine that was in Europe. I had like a UK, a pan-European, and an Italian, and Ski Francais all in 1 month. And I just kind of diversified, and I started, working more like for Fisher, working on R&D for like the big sticks and, ad campaigns, and just tried to keep my foot in the door. But, I was able to ski a little bit in the second year, but it was just not there.
Just hurt and wasn't making you happy?
Yeah, but Fisher was unbelievably loyal. And so was Dionysi and all my other contracts that I had. That doesn't always happen. It's usually like you have an injury like that. It's like, oh, well, we got the most out of them. And, you're the flavor of the season or two, and they'll move on. But I'm proud to say I've got over a decade with Fisher International, and then, was off for quite a while getting a record deal. And then before I really got radio airplay in the States, I got a call from the head of Volkl asking if I wanted a spot on the international team. And I was kind of blown away. And that led to an amazing 10-year history with those guys. And still really good friends with all the people that ever signed me. Zeal Optics, I think I was their first winter athlete, and still speak with the owners to this day.
When you think of money with all the different contracts you had, and you think of the best year that you had as a pro skier, just skiing alone, I mean, were you making like 50 to 100,000 euros skiing?
Oddly enough, yeah, I definitely had a couple of years with over 100 grand. And I started really getting into the business. It wasn't just the straight contracts, Mike. I started working with the photo editor of a pan-European magazine, and he chose the covers. And, I've had a lot of covers. It's definitely over 50, 60 covers. But I started to learn, like, okay, photo incentive contracts. How can I make the most amount of money off of one cover, as long as I know that you can read the goggles, you can read this. And so the Fisher contract for boots, binding, and skis was far beyond what I ever expected I could make. And back then, it was unheard of to be making, whatever, 60,000 euro from a ski brand as a freeride skier.
Sure, yeah.
But when I did end up signing that initial one, I was so flat broke. I was like, I'm just going to wing it. And I took a train and went up to the headquarters in Reardon, Austria, and I hung out with them for 3 days, and my life changed after that period. And I got a real contract with real budget and real travel and film, and it was just a great ride and still great relationships to the day.
And then music-wise, you were able to go tour with the movies that you were doing and sing songs and be the MC. And does that eventually transition into you just going and singing songs at different places through all the different people you're meeting all over Europe?
Yeah, I think it led to like playing at major Red Bull events. I would play at Solden for the opening World Cup. When I did the movie tours, the first 3 years that I was doing it, I would first go to London and do the ski show there. And we'd be there for 10 days jumping in an arena. And then I'd get on a plane, and then I'd start doing like 5 cities a week. And I started drop shipping CDs to each city, every third or fourth city. And I know one fall I did over 50 movie premieres.
Jeez.
And it became lucrative. It was awesome. You're at the Innsbruck Congress Hall, you're at Rex Theater Paris, Hamburg, Berlin, just city after city. And it was sponsored by Mövenpick, which is a big hotel chain. Also, they had killer sponsors. So, you were getting an appearance fee, you were getting paid your travel, And then on top of it, my sponsors were happy because I was signing 1 million posters. They were going on everybody's wall, and I was selling CDs, out of my suitcase. And looking back, I didn't know what I had, but you'd give your left foot to have that opportunity as an up-and-coming musician because it put you out there to a lot of exposure.
Well, you could build an audience on the back of your skiing to be in front of all those people because of your music talent. Like, being that you were that skier, that gave you first dibs on the opportunity because skiers want some of their kind to be doing everything if you have the ability to do it well.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I was embraced by the people who were very supportive. McConkey was really supportive. He was a huge proponent because I wanted to give up quite a few times, but he kept sending my stuff out there and here and there and, having the help of your comrades and, but I'll tell you this much. Once I was like, okay, now I want to go for radio in the States. That's the odds that I made it on the Billboard Top 40 like I did. I mean, I should play the lottery. It is such a complicated, tough business, but like anything, I don't think I would have had the success had I not learned all the marketing and the ROI knowledge of like, how does this business work? Why is someone going to select my song? Because they have so many options and there's a much bigger picture, but you learn a lot from working on the business level in skiing. That helped me tremendously when it came to having the business acumen and the wherewithal to understand why is someone going to sign you and invest, $500,000 to get you out on the road and to build you up.
Well, you mentioned a couple things before that I'm going to talk about before we're going to get you into the U.S. and talking about building yourself over here. First is McConkey, and I usually do a whole episode of McConkey every year around the Payne McClonky event. I didn't go this year. What is your best or funniest Shane McConkey story? I'm sure you have to have one that sticks out.
There's a lot. That guy had so many classic pranks on people, like, clipping toenails and putting them in someone's toothbrush and ski toenails, no less. Cellophane on the toilet. That guy just was a wise joker and just that killer sense of humor. And, you had to be careful not to let your underwear go there. And that guy would rub Gold Bond on your underwear and you wouldn't know it until you put all your gear on. The list is many, and Shane outdid himself. And even to the point where after he passed, I was talking to JT and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but before they left that day, he pulled a prank and hid his passport, I think, or, he was very infamous for pulling some crazy stunts. Not just on skis, man.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start out with Elan Skis. While some of us wish every day was a powder day, that's not reality. And that's where the Wingman and the Wildcat come into play for men and women. Think hard-charging front-side skis that are designed to make you remember how fun carving is. And they're still versatile enough where you won't want to go switch skis if it snows or it gets choppy out there. Like almost every Elan, these are both award-winning skis from reputable sources like Ski Magazine and others. And Wingman and Wildcat aren't only super fun to ski, but they're going to make you a better skier. And while you can find out about Wingman and Wildcat and the Playmaker series and Ripstick over at elanskis.com, the place where the knowledge about Elan Skis and really everything in the industry is in your local ski shop. So go to one this fall, smell the wax and the P-Tex, flex the skis, and most importantly, talk to your local shop guy. The guy who's a real skier in there, and he can help you pick out what's best for you. So Elan wants you to support your local ski shop, and you can ask them what the right pair of Elans are for you. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing, and now is the time to think snow. And skiers, snowboarders, weekend warriors, tubers, sledders, snowbikers, snowmobilers, snowshoers, sled doggers, shovel racers, snow angel makers, ice skaters, snowball fighters, igloo builders, you get it. The doers of winter are starting to get ready to shred, and post-shred, it's all about après. And this year, do après the right way. Forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, forget about not taking more runs on the mountain, forget about getting in trouble on the way home, because with a beer from Best Day Brewing, you don't have to worry about any negative consequences, just incredible flavor. Blind taste tests prove that you won't be able to taste the difference between a Best Day and your favorite beer with alcohol. The only difference you'll notice is how good you'll feel in the morning, and you're going to remember what you did last night, which is almost refreshing as a Best Day itself. To celebrate your best day yet, next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of Best Day. Or you can always buy it on your Alaska Airlines flight, Amazon.com, or head on over to bestdaybrewing.com to get the full assortment of Best Days. Those are my sponsors. Now, let's jump back into the podcast.
Did you play or open up for Hasselhoff?
Never.
Okay.
No. The funny thing is that guy is huge in Germany, and I don't mind saying this, that guy sucks.
Okay.
He's the worst musician, but they love him over there.
Who's the biggest person you've ever opened up for?
Say Alice in Chains, Godsmack.
Dude, Alice in Chains with Lane Staley?
No, with the new singer. We did, I don't know how many shows. We did a run in Florida with them. They were all like 10, 15,000 person shows. Godsmack was another standout. We got to play the main stage. You know, some of these bigger festivals, if you're a baby band, you don't get to play on the big stage, but we did, and we had a hot song on the charts. And in the Midwest, we were doing really good, and it was us, and then Seven Dust, and then Godsmack, and my favorite band I've ever gotten to open up for, and a lot of people don't know them, is a band called Blackstone Cherry.
Okay, I don't know.
But yeah, they're a Southern rock band. They're just near and dear to my heart. You know, I would say Alice in Chains and Jerry Cantrell. What a cool guy. Getting to hang out with some of your idols and to learn that they're really cool and down-to-earth people.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I saw them this year, or I saw his band this year, and it was awesome. But let's see. So you have all this great shit going on for you in Europe. You're doing all these tours, and like everything's great. I mean, given you had to go through your knee injury and all that. What makes you want to move back to the States?
I just had it in my brain that, because I owned my own record label, I got a few record label deals offered to me in Europe, but ultimately decided to do it with a partner out of Munich, Germany. And I got signed by Chrysalis Music Group in Germany. Chrysalis, you know, is now BMG, but you know, they own Neil Young and Elvis, right? So I got signed not as an artist, but as a writer, as a composer. And they were like, if you're really going to do this, we're going to set you up in meetings in LA. And they paid for me to write a bunch, and they paid for me to demo it. And, you know, I really, really wanted to be, you know, because I was really known as a skier over in Europe, but not really in the States. And you're in the biggest movie franchise over there, but I wanted to be in Warren Miller. And I just really wanted to be on the radio in the States. And that was kind of my eye on the prize. And luckily, you know, I had some contacts and I was signed, which puts you into a different category. When you walk in the door, obviously you're there for a reason, and you've put in the hard work for someone to actually sign you. Because when you get signed as a composer, you get a pretty good chunk of change up front, but then they own a percentage of your royalties in perpetuity.
Yep.
But it's leverage. It's like, it's one step further to getting a real record deal. And it was not easy. I got turned down well over 300 times. And I had pretty much all but given up when I landed a record deal.
That's crazy. So 300 in LA or just 300 places everywhere?
Mostly LA. I, you know, how the luxury of Chrysalis was flying me to New York and setting me up with meetings and showcases. And I actually already had the album done, and it was produced by Bob Marlette, who is top 10 rock producers ever. You know, Shinedown, Seether, Saliva, Evanescence, Nickelback. And so I had a product that was ready to go. And I also had Once in My Life, which everybody had a strong feeling that that was a really good song.
You had a single that was a radio-friendly hit that you could go out of the gate, get you some airplay, and get people in the door and hooked into your band right away.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I remember going to Roadrunner Records where I had a potential development deal, and they're known for Nickelback. And it was so funny, the amount of shit I heard from people that were almost going to sign, and maybe, and the other thing is nobody knew how old I was because my agent had lied. A lot of people thought I was like 10 years younger. And at that time, I was like 36 or 37 years old when I finally got a record deal. And, you know, I heard this one A&R guy, he told me, he goes, you know, Matt, I get it and I get the story, but, you know, that song, it's awesome, but I think it's too radio friendly and I don't really hear a hit. And I go, bro, did you just say all that in one sentence?
Yeah.
And on that same guy, who I won't mention any names, but he and I saw each other on stage before I went out in front of probably like 15,000 people. And this was a show with Godsmack that I was referring to. And that was the first time that when I was playing Once in My Life, and it was huge on the radio in the Midwest, and everybody was singing the chorus to where I stopped singing and I was just listening. And to this day, that right there was the most epic feeling musically I've ever had. That was like validation times 10. And that guy was there on the side stage and he came up to me afterwards and he's like, you know, I told you, I knew that was a hit. And I was like, man, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, totally.
I really, because he strung me along for like 5 months and I thought I had it, you know, and that's the thing, trying to do something like that. The highs are high, the lows are low. It's just so many ups and downs, and you just got to have a lot of fortitude and resiliency and a little bit of luck and work your ass off even harder. And it's definitely not for the faint at heart trying to get into the music business.
I would think it's similar to pro skiing at the same time. There's a lot of really talented people, but you need to be right place at the right time, meet the right people. Your talent has to all come together at the right time. And the highs are super high, but the lows are the injuries. On the ski side, the lows are just hearing 300 no's in your end. But I would think there's also the same adrenaline rush and stuff as like being on stage and some of the stuff that you get skiing at the same time. It's probably similar or crossover a little bit.
Oh, you nailed it. It is, you know, like flashing a huge face in AK or wherever you are and getting out the bottom, you know, that feeling of walking off a stage where everybody knew the lyrics. You know, the idea that you took out a pencil and a paper and an acoustic. And then from that point, you saw it all the way down the line and you walk off stage in a pool of sweat. Everybody's singing your lyrics. It means something to them. Yeah, the adrenaline rush, it's identical for me.
And you know you killed it. When you walk off like that, everyone's singing your lyrics. You know you helped make 15,000 people have the night of their life, which has got to be like hard to put that into words.
Yeah, and you know, it's not like I'm some hit writing machine. I've got a pretty damn good country song right now that's just got recorded by a pretty well-known country artist. And I'm excited to be diversifying and writing music for other people. You know, some people are just hit writing machines. I don't think I am. I always go back to every now and again a squirrel gets a nut, and I've had a few, and a few of them have landed, and it's a great feeling. If I look back on stuff, I was talking to my dad about it. He said, "You have any regrets?" And I said, you know, the fact that I said I was going to be a skier and I stuck to it, and you didn't believe me, and you let me hitchhike to Vermont, which you would be arrested in modern day for doing that. And then to then have a crazy idea that you're going to not only do that, and then you're going to now take on music. You know, you'd have to have a screw loose, that's for sure. But I feel very proud to can say that I've had a little bit of a success in both of my dreams.
And so skiing kind of, the first time it wound down was injury, probably the second time as well. But in music, I mean, with the band, you have Black Sunshine, that goes, you guys do a full-on tour, I think around 2010. You're on the road for probably 200 days, and it's all to promote your stuff, and that's got to be grueling, but that's part of the game. It's like that's what you have to do to build yourself and build an audience. It doesn't go into a second album, I believe. What happens with the band? Does it just kind of fade away after that first run?
I was not going to say this, but I will. I don't really care.
Okay.
So I was so puzzled because we had been 27 weeks on the Billboard Top 40, and we were just finishing a massive tour with Hinder and another band called My Darkest Days. And I pretty much got a call saying that tour support is dried up and come back to LA. And I just didn't understand what the hell was going on. It turns out that the gentleman that signed me and took a chance on me, who I am still really good friends with him to this day. And I don't know if I believe the story, but certainly somebody did. So basically the guy that signed me, and Black Sunshine wasn't a band. It was just, I wanted a different name than my last name.
Okay.
So the person that got signed, it was just me. And then I created the band after that. He decided to sleep with the owner of the record label's wife, which apparently did not bode well for me. And everybody that was under his direction or whatever got let go. And that was a huge, huge blow for me. I just felt, robbed because planets had aligned. And I mean, it took me like 7 years of pounding the pavement and doing every shitty job just to keep it going. So luckily enough, I called Volkl and I said, hey, I want to come to Europe and you got some work for me. What can we do? And the Ski Channel said, hey, we want to do a documentary and feature you on it. And I signed a deal with Volkl, and I just needed some time to clear my head. And I went over to Engelberg for a couple months, and then I scheduled an acoustic tour all over Europe that year, me and my acoustic partner, who's a great skier, Drew Campbell. And I didn't know what to do because that was a blow. That crushed me. But that's just another day in the music business. And that is the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
So you get fucked in the music business, and it does crush you, but you're lucky enough that you have the ability to make a phone call and get another pro ski contract out of it. So while it could totally devastate your self-esteem and self-worth, it's just like, oh, now I'm a pro skier, and now I'm going to tour Europe.
Yeah, and Perfect Moment was the ski company brand, the clothing that was made and owned by the film company Nuit de la Glisse, which they started calling it the Perfect Moment series. So I got a really good contract with the clothing, then I started helping design. And that's when I was like, I don't know if I have it in me to get another record deal, but that's when Mount St. Elias came up. I penned about 5 or 6 songs for that one. Then the Streif film came up, and then the Jeremy Jones came up. And then still things like Felix Baumgartner licensed once in my life for his TV commercial. He had a clothing ad called Northland. And then that started running all over the place. And then out of nowhere, I get a call from this guy that I know from the music business in New Zealand. And he's like, dude, your song's on the radio over here. Do you want to come over and do the festival circuit?
No way.
And I was like, what? And this is like 2 years after I'd gotten off the tour bus. And he gave me the budgets, and I said, well, I can't fly my band over there. I'm going to eat up all the profit. And it was funny because these were big shows. One of them was called the Honey Jam Festival, which was up on the North Island. And I said, do you know any killer cover bands down there? And there was a cover band called the Furious Three. And there were these giant Maori Island dudes that were just badass musicians. And I reached out to them on MySpace and I said, hey, I'm the singer of this band. I got this song and I got these jobs. Would you want to be my backing band? And I literally emailed them the song list and the set list. I flew to New Zealand and I think I rehearsed on a Tuesday and then rehearsed again with them on a Thursday in like a living room. And then walked out on stage Saturday night in front of thousands of people on a big, like, major festival stage, and it went great. And then got booked to do a couple other shows down there, and, you know, clutching at straws, just throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks, and managed to come out the other side okay. And, you know, that's where the partnership with Gibson Guitars and Volkl Skis came about, which has been pretty amazing. You know, not just the money that we've raised for charity from it, but just, you know, the sheer idea of parlaying music and sports together and doing things that are good for the world. And I don't know if you know about that, but if you look at any of my music videos, you'll see a one-of-a-kind, handmade from the Gibson Custom Shop, one-of-a-kind guitar that looks exactly like the ski that I was skiing that year.
No way.
So, and once in my life, it's the Buddha from Gautama. Seize the Day is the V-Works guitar, and there's actually the pick guard is actually part of my ski. We did a Shiro, we did a Katana, we did I think like 7 or 8 altogether. Yeah, each time we would use the video as a platform, like the High Fives video, and then we would put it up for auction and I would talk it up, and then, you know, whatever it went for, I think, I don't know how much it went for, quite a bit, but we donated to High Fives and Protect Our Winners and the McConkey Foundation. And that's the kind of stuff that makes it worth it, that you feel like you're really doing something good with your music.
Yeah, you know, and it's like you're able to not only give back to community and causes that you care about, but also friends who are creating these causes as well. So you can do it all, not just keep it in your community, but keep it in your ecosystem.
It's as real as it gets. It's organic, and it, you know, anything that helps out your fellow man, it's pretty awesome.
Well, I was going to talk about your ankle injury. I'm going to totally pass over the injury because I think we should talk about what you're doing now before we get into your last dose of inappropriate questions. So what's the program now? I know you have a new project that you're working on. So what is it?
Yeah, so I recently, you know, worked pretty hard the last 7 years at retaining my rights back because, you know, in the music industry, when you sign a publishing deal and somebody owns, that means that they theoretically own a lot of your royalties. And, you know, that's the reason why Prince changed his name to a symbol, was so that he could get out of his publishing deal.
Okay.
So I worked pretty hard the last like 7-8 years trying to reclaim ownership. And I refused to release anything per se as a result, but I stayed very diligent writing. So I have more original music than I know what to do with to release. So I've been shopping songs to Nashville. Like I said before, I've got a song that's going to get released here in a couple months called Ain't That a Shame. So writing music for other artists. And then I'm going to use the new platform of YouTube revenue, because now you don't really need a record deal. If you don't really want to jump into that, it's not necessary. And in the last 3 years studying the industry, there's about 20 new ancillary revenue streams that were never going back to the independent artist. But, like how quickly the internet took over music, they couldn't keep up with it. And the same for royalties. So the timing right now, I'm going to start to release about over 50 songs in about 18 months, and they're going to be segmented out. So one is a very, very heavy project, which isn't quite as heavy as Slipknot, but it's super heavy like Stone Sour. And I'm going to do probably about 12 to 15 of those songs. And then I've got a Black Sunshine album, and then I've got a Reardon solo album, which the Reardon stuff is definitely more orchestrated, more Goo Goo Dolls, more singer-songwriter stuff. And then I'm going to start to release all the soundtrack material because I've got over 900 songs placed in soundtracks. So, and when I say that, like, they're not all songs with lyrics. It's like, that if you've seen Jeremy Jones Higher, there's a massive segment of that movie that I did, and it's called The Ninth Mile. And you would never know it's me. And I really want to release that stuff in a very creative way on YouTube, where as we build up to it, my writing partner and I are going to talk about how we saw the footage, right? What spurred on the idea of where we went in what direction? Was it indigenous instrumentation? Stuff like that, where I kind of give the backstory on how songs are written, what's the process. And it's all basically going to be material that will be released on a YouTube channel, but stuff that I would love to learn about from my favorite songwriters. Like, what is your process? So I've got about 11 different segments ready to go, and I want to get a few more before I start to release, because I think it's really important that you follow up with consistency.
Yeah, if you have consistency of 11 in the can, you're in a great spot compared to most creators from what I hear.
I'm just going to have fun with it. And I think, Mike, the coolest part about going into this, while it's very nerve-wracking that you're going to put yourself out there in the limelight, so to speak, again, but I'll be able to do it on my terms. And I don't care if a song is meant for radio or not. I don't care if the chorus hits by 45 seconds. You're confined in so many ways by being part of the machine, being a signed artist, that you need to stay with a formula. And in today's climate, I don't care if it's successful or not. I hope it is. I just hope that it gives people inspiration, or, my lyrics help them out of a jam or a rut. A lot of it is about tragedy over triumph and, dealing with harsh tragedies or addictions or, just real life problems. And I'm not singing about skiing 6 feet of deep powder.
Right.
So I don't think I've ever been more excited in my music career anyway, to start to release music that matters, that I would have never really released before, but now I kind of have a good idea of how I'm going to do it and the business behind it. I've got some fun projects with some different skiers that I've worked with in the past that I think you guys are going to love. Colby James West and I teamed up to do another one, and I'll just leave it there. That kid is super talented, and our latest little spoof, the music song collaboration, is pretty fun. So just looking forward to not just sitting on all these songs on a hard drive, and get back to having fun with music.
All right, so that's where we're going to see you next, is going to be on the internet and putting out stuff that you're proud to put your name on, that's going to make a difference in the world. But now we're going to do something that makes no difference in the world whatsoever. It is called Inappropriate Questions. And this is where I get someone that again, to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything.
God.
Yep, last week I got Uncle E, and this week I was able to get someone even better looking, better skiing, better golfing, but not close to as good on a microphone. I'm talking about legendary skier who founded Nema Vitamins, who's also the Oakley rep to the stars. I'm talking about the genuinely nice, great person that I know as Josh Loubek. Are you ready for question number 1 from Josh?
Well, I just want to make sure everybody knows that he is frontman in a boy band, the most legendary boy band ever, called Forever.
We did talk about Forever on the podcast. I think it was Forever. I don't know if there was the R on it or not.
Yeah.
But we did talk about that. Let me see if I've got it queued up to the right questions here.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, homie. Mike reached out for me to ask you a couple questions. Circa 2000, London. What were you doing? What band were you affiliated with? And who did you meet that is relevant in your life right now?
In 1998, I think that was the first time I was invited to be a skier in the arenas where you did showcases, in
Like the Ice or Big Air kind of thing?
Yeah. This was the one that he's talking about. We went for 10 days and Shane Anderson, Evan Raps. It was a lot of fun. We would jump 3 to 5 times a day. They built a giant scaffolding with real snow inside of an arena at a ski trade show. And that was when I did my first ever showcase to get a real record deal. And on the last day of the show, I had my band all fly up and we set my band up on the tabletop and we performed a 10-song set while the guys jumped over the band. So I'm singing and Loubek is flying over upside down. It was just amazing. But I would beg to say that really that was the trip that the legendary fictional boy band called Forever, which was myself, Loubek, Jamie Strachan, and Dave Gravy Keem, was born. And we went around London and we would go to like China White, which you can't get in. And we were with some of the guys from MTV and we started just telling people that we were famous rock stars. And we got into all the clubs and we had this little sign where we put up 4 in front and then we turned it sideways with 2 fingers and ran it across our eyes. And of course, I had platinum white hair or white dreadlocks and, Josh looks like Justin Timberlake and Jamie Strachan had bright blue hair. So we kind of looked the part. But at that show was, ironically, I met the love of my life and my fiance today. I met a gal named Shane Karuk, and I was so enamored with her. I had a girlfriend at the time, and she was engaged to a pro hockey player. And while I just thought she was the best thing ever, I was a very faithful person. And over the course of us being there at the trade show, all the skiers and snowboarders were trying to get at her. And I was kind of her safe landing spot. And we became really good friends. And I went back the next year and the next year, and we always stayed in contact. And over the years, she followed me with Black Sunshine. And a couple of years ago, I noticed that she may or may not be single. And we started a beautiful friendship about 1.5 years ago that has developed into she's moving to North America on December 1st. And we just got engaged. And I guess everything comes full circle. And, we've been really good friends for, 25, 27 years. We've always stayed in contact and man, it's like game on. And, it's tough. I'm super good friends with my daughter's mom. We never got married. And actually my daughter's mom, Amy, and Shane are really close friends. And, it's everything comes full circle and I feel very blessed. I have a lot to thank for. So many things, so many opportunities have come about because of skiing.
This is the worst inappropriate question ever. There was nothing inappropriate there. We're going to leave that as question number 1. We got a lot of information out of you, but not too much inappropriateness. Loubek is not known for his inappropriate stuff. Let's see what question number 2 has to offer. Is it going to be more inappropriate? I highly doubt it. Here we go.
Second question, a little bit more poetic, not so much inappropriate, but you've traveled around the world skiing and playing rock concerts. You're a legend. What advice would you give a younger version of you?
It's easy to get full of yourself, and if I was to do it over, not that I think I went overboard in this direction, but as quickly as you are the hottest thing on the market, you can go from hero to zero. And I would say to my younger self, stay grounded, stay humble, stay with your original principles of why you're doing it, and don't get wrapped up into all the hubbub of stardom or the attention of people. And not that I think I did a bad job of it, but it's kind of human nature. It's a lot to handle when all of a sudden you're just everywhere. And I have a lot to thank for that. Skiing kind of prepped me for it a little bit, but I would just say, remain humble and work harder.
All right, there we go. Your final
That
inappropriate.
wasn't very inappropriate at all.
No, but this is Loubek. But I think his last inappropriate question has to be a little bit inappropriate. Let's see what he's got.
Okay, third question. We were hanging out in Sun Valley. You were hanging with Tommy Lee and discussing artwork or something. What was it like partying with Tommy Lee?
There we go. That should be more inappropriate.
Yeah, I was doing that 48 straight tour.
Oh, man, those guys spent a ton of money between 48 straight and the ski tour. They partied and spent a ton of money and had a great time. And I don't know how well it did, but it didn't really last that long.
Yeah, I think it was someone's sort of a very wealthy person wanted to do something rad for their industry. And I think he did a great job, but I wish it was still around. Yeah, we were in Sun Valley and I ended up in some mega mansion, and we had played on that stop with my band. And my guitarist at the time, he went on to be the guitar player for Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus, and still is to this day. And out of nowhere, we ended up in this, I don't know, this house was so massive. And Tommy Lee was DJing. And, there were Picassos on the wall. And, next thing you know, I'm just throwing down with Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. And I don't know who else was there. Maybe Kreitler, maybe Anderson. But a Picasso may or may not have gone off the wall. And there may or may not have been white powder put all over a Picasso. And I think I'll let everybody's imagination go from there. And the other thing is, yeah, and, I feel bad, but not really. But somehow that Picasso came home with me that night, and it's still on my wall.
No way. That is incredible.
And it is a real Picasso. I thought it was a fake. And I had it looked at that, and they're like, dude, this is a real Picasso. I was like, right on. All right, cool.
That is the perfect.
And Tommy Lee, I don't know how that guy does it. I don't know how. I guess if you just keep doing drugs, you can keep doing it. But whoa, that level of partying. Because I've never been a weed smoker, never a druggie at all. But Jesus Christ, man. That was a night to remember. And with that, I think rock and roll is not dead.
All right, man. So Loubek ending it with a banger. That is Inappropriate Questions, and that's the podcast. And for you, you've really lived 2 separate lives that every little kid would dream to do. One being a rock star, one being a pro skier. And the wild thing is, with you, there was 2 moments in your life. One with a babysitter at age 11 where she snuck you into a concert. You smoked a little weed and saw David Lee Roth, and that changes your life. And then a few years later, you see Hot Dog the movie, and that changes your life. And you're just like a little kid from Louisiana who's like, I'm going to be a rock star or I'm going to be a pro skier. And it's like, fuck it, you got to be both of them, which is pretty incredible because that doesn't happen for anybody else in the world. Like Colby James West, yeah, he can dream that he's going to be a pro musician, and maybe he could be one day, but he hasn't had the best of both worlds like you have yet. Sure, he had the pro skier success, but you've had success on both sides, and it's pretty amazing. And I thank you for telling your story, and I thank you for your time.
Totally humbled and honored. Thank you, Mike Powell, and thanks for what you're doing for the industry. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
So that was time with Matt Reardon, and I've had a folder in my files for Matt for years, but we never connected as he was going through an ankle injury that really limited everything that he did. His life looked like it was not close to what it once was, and it didn't look so fun at all, but then Matt had a surgery, and it looks like those ankle problems are behind him, and he can get back on with life. And what a life he has going on. Between music and skiing, Matt's lived one of the most well-rounded lives of anyone I've had on the show. So much success in two entirely different realms. And that's a hard thing to do. That's the podcast. At this point, I need to get back to selling stickers. Do you need any stickers? How about tents? Let me know, because I am happy to get you the best discounts out there. I'm not on commission, and while my boss is always going to make money, I don't care how much he makes. I just want you to be stoked. So email me at mike.powell@diecutstickers.com, and I will take care of you with some excellent product. You're going to be stoked, I'm going to be stoked, and my boss is going to be stoked. Other than that, thank you for listening each week, and please review me wherever you listen. Finally, I want to give another shout out to the brands that make this living history of snow sports happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, Thermic Heated Socks, and Descent Labs. Have a great week, everyone.